The film begins with a man named Thomas, who returns home only to hear the devastating news that his sister has been kidnapped. In a letter addressed to their father, his sister writes that if they want to see her alive, they must come to an island and pay a price to free her. Otherwise, the kidnappers will kill her. Determined to save her, Thomas sets out on his journey. After a long train ride, he arrives at the seashore, where he is supposed to board a boat to the island. Before boarding, Thomas notices that his ticket is different from the others. Sensing something unusual, he exchanges his ticket with another man. Once on the boat, he observes that the man he exchanged tickets with has a cross mark on his luggage. Early the next morning, the boat reaches the island, and Thomas notices that the man with the cross is being escorted away by some people. Newcomers are greeted on the island, and each of them is given an empty bottle. Thomas heads to his room and discovers a book written by the island's leader, Malcolm. Malcolm refers to himself as an angel born on the island and claims to be its father. He explains that many of the island's residents are criminals or fugitives who fled the government to seek refuge there. The next day, Thomas meets the island's doctor, who is Malcolm's daughter. As Thomas watches, he notices some people taking the man he saw earlier as a prisoner, and his condition looks dire. Later, Thomas attends a church service where Malcolm recounts the story of how he and his two friends escaped prison and settled on the island, where they eventually built a thriving community. Malcolm tells the islanders that there are no taxes, no money exchange, and no wars, just peace and happiness. Meanwhile, Thomas notices a woman walking outside the church, but she is visible only to him. Strangely, Malcolm also sees her and seems to take notice of Thomas. As the church service continues, a disturbing event unfolds. Malcolm's people discover that the man they captured does not have any money on him. They realize that they have caught the wrong person and suspect that Thomas, who has come to rescue his sister, is hiding among the newcomers. Enraged, they kill the man. Later that evening, Thomas learns of a secret love affair between two island residents, Jeremy and another woman, who keep their relationship hidden. As Thomas roams the village that night, he witnesses the newcomers filling their bottles with blood. When he checks outside Malcolm's house, he notices Malcolm taking a secret path that leads to a tunnel beneath the house. As he tries to piece together the strange occurrences, Thomas comes across Jeremy and his love interest, realizing that something more sinister is happening. The next morning, Thomas discovers that bottles filled with blood have been placed outside every resident's door. He swaps the contents of his bottle with someone else's and places it outside his room. Later that evening, as Thomas opens his door, he cuts his hand on the key, spilling blood on the floor. Immediately, a woman enters his room and starts licking the blood from the floor in a terrifying scene. Horrified, Thomas quickly tears a page from Malcolm's book and uses it to sketch a map of the village, hoping to make sense of his surroundings. The next day, Thomas finds himself further unraveling the mysteries of the island. He follows the tunnel and sees a remote house in the forest. As he approaches, he sees that Malcolm is coming out of the same tunnel, and it's being watched by a frightening servant. Malcolm enters the house, and Thomas quietly watches the eerie scene unfold. Later, Jeremy approaches Thomas and thanks him for keeping their secret love affair quiet. Jeremy, though initially reluctant, finally tells Thomas about his sister's kidnapping. He reveals that a month ago, Malcolm and his two companions, one of whom is Jeremy's father, kidnapped Thomas's sister and brought her to the island to hold for ransom. They intend to demand a large sum of money from her father. Jeremy also confides that the island is suffering from a terrible famine. The crops have failed, and the animals have stopped reproducing. To survive, Malcolm and his companions need money to bring in supplies from the outside world. As a result, they have resorted to extreme measures, including kidnapping Thomas's sister. Thomas vows to save her and insists that Jeremy help him in exchange for keeping their love a secret. Reluctantly, Jeremy agrees. Meanwhile, Malcolm plans to call all the newcomers to the church and question them, suspecting that one of them might be hiding the man who came to rescue his sister. Malcolm insists that everyone memorize passages from his book, a strange demand meant to solidify his control over the island's residents. Thomas attends the gathering, and just as he is about to be questioned, a man attacks Malcolm. The attacker, sent by the king, had been ordered to kill Malcolm, as the king had grown hostile toward him and sought to take control of the island. Thomas, however, manages to stop the assassin, but he is injured in the process. Malcolm is brought to safety, and he promises Thomas that he will be loyal to him for saving his life. With this newfound allegiance, Malcolm and his companions intensify their search for Thomas and his sister. That night, Thomas's sister is brought before the island's residents, and Malcolm publicly accuses her of being an agent sent by the king to infiltrate the island. He threatens to kill her unless the man she is hiding, Thomas, comes forward. Thomas, though terrified, refuses to reveal himself. The plan fails, but Malcolm's anger grows. The following morning, Thomas's sister is bound in chains, and a group of children taunt her. Malcolm's daughter arrives just in time to scold the children and send them away. Meanwhile, Malcolm and his friend discuss the upcoming festival. They plan to use the event as an opportunity to search the newcomers' homes for money. That night, during the festival, Thomas, with Jeremy's help, breaks into Malcolm's house and begins to explore the hidden tunnel beneath it. However, while searching his room, Malcolm and his friend discover a map that Thomas had drawn of the village. They realize that he is still in the house, and the hunt intensifies. Jeremy's father, standing guard outside, realizes his son is involved in helping Thomas. He confronts Jeremy, but the situation escalates, and Jeremy's father drives him away. Meanwhile, Malcolm and his friend search the house and prepare to catch Thomas, unaware that Jeremy is now their enemy as well. As Malcolm and his friend search for Thomas, the tension grows. Malcolm's servant, who has been watching over the village, brings Thomas's sister to a secluded area in the jungle. Here, she is hung, and Thomas has no choice but to spend the night in the same terrifying tunnel where he's been hiding. The following morning, Malcolm's daughter secretly approaches Thomas in the tunnel, offering him clothes to change. She claims she wants to help him, although Thomas is initially suspicious. She insists that her father is not a murderer, but Thomas, now aware of the truth, accuses Malcolm of being a false angel and responsible for his sister's kidnapping. Moved by his plight, Malcolm's daughter begins to sympathize with Thomas. She leads him to a dry, barren field where no one will find him. The crops here have been poisoned, leaving the area desolate and abandoned. Malcolm, meanwhile, heads to his friend's house, only to find it empty. His friend has packed up and left, taking his son with him. Malcolm tracks him down to the seashore, where he finds the man preparing to leave the island. Malcolm pleads with his old companion not to abandon the island, but the man refuses, unwilling to continue their twisted plans. Malcolm tries to convince him, saying that they built this island together, but his friend is determined to leave. On the other side, Jeremy visits his lover's house and learns that she is pregnant with his child. When Jeremy's father finds out, he reacts with violent anger, threatening to kill his daughter. Jeremy returns to the house, only to find that his father has brutally killed her. In a fit of rage, Jeremy attacks his father, but the older man uses this to manipulate the situation, claiming Jeremy is a murderer. He spreads the story that his son killed his daughter and now seeks to kill him. Jeremy, realizing his life is in danger, flees into the forest, pursued by the guards. Malcolm's friend, now fully in control, orders the guards to capture Jeremy and bring him back to face purification. However, Jeremy escapes and seeks refuge with Malcolm's daughter in the dry fields. The guards, relentless in their pursuit, capture him and bring him back to the village, where he is sentenced to die. Malcolm's daughter tries to intervene, but the guards carry out the execution anyway. Thomas, determined to save Jeremy, follows them and intervenes during the so-called purification, which is nothing more than a brutal execution disguised as a ritual. Despite Malcolm and his friend's best efforts, Jeremy is killed. His father weeps over his son's death, but it is too late. Meanwhile, Malcolm and his traitorous companion argue over control of the island. The companion insists that he is the true leader and accuses Malcolm of being weak and a false god. He demands that Malcolm prove himself by killing Thomas in front of the villagers. Malcolm, torn by his daughter's attempts to stop him, prepares to strike, but before he can do so, a gunshot rings out. Jeremy's father, having somehow survived, returns and shoots the companion. He announces that it is Goddess, the island's mysterious deity, who must be killed now. Afterward, chaos erupts as everyone scrambles to save themselves. Thomas, witnessing the unfolding destruction, is determined to stop the madness. He fights his way out of the village and makes his way back to the jungle, where he encounters Malcolm's drunken servant, who had previously been feeding blood to Goddess. Thomas, now in the jungle, discovers that Malcolm's drunken servant has been feeding blood to Goddess. As Goddess drinks, the barren land begins to spring to life, with flowers blooming and branches turning green. Meanwhile, Thomas's sister, still trapped in a sack, is brought to Goddess, and Thomas finally frees her. As he's about to escape with his sister, the servant appears, and Thomas knocks him unconscious with a blow to the head. With the servant out of the way, Thomas rushes to find his sister, but just as they begin to leave, Malcolm's friend arrives and takes her captive once more. He drags her back to Malcolm's house and locks her in the church. Malcolm's daughter, who has been trying to help Thomas, accompanies him as they prepare to confront the remaining threats. Back at the church, the villainous companion of Malcolm begins to reveal his plan. He confesses that the blood they had been giving to Goddess had started to weaken her, and so, to preserve their power, they began feeding her human blood. With this confession, he explains that he will now kill both Malcolm's daughter and Thomas's sister to offer them as sacrifice to Goddess. However, before he can carry out his plan, Thomas bursts into the church and attacks him. A brutal fight ensues, and both women manage to break their chains and join the fight. They strangle Malcolm's friend with the chains, killing him in the process. Thomas, severely wounded from the battle, tells his sister and Malcolm's daughter to run and escape on a boat waiting for them at the shore. His sister, though heartbroken, refuses to leave him behind, and together they head toward the boat. However, Thomas, too injured to move fast, collapses on the way. He pleads with his sister to go without him, knowing that he won't survive the injuries he sustained. Reluctantly, she agrees, and leaves with Malcolm's daughter, both heartbroken by the necessity of leaving Thomas behind. Meanwhile, Malcolm, still alive, arrives at the scene. He sees Thomas's blood spilling onto the ground, and to his amazement, new plants begin to sprout where it falls. A smile spreads across Malcolm's face, realizing that Thomas has now become a living deity, the new god of silence that the island so desperately needed. As the island begins to heal, the people no longer suffer from hunger or lack. Thanks to the powers of the new god, the island is set to thrive once more. Yet, it is also a place bound by a terrifying truth. Those who dare to defy its new rules may face a much darker fate. Malcolm watches as the island, under the rule of Thomas's influence, will continue to grow and prosper. With this final revelation, the story of the island concludes. An island that lives on through the life force of one man, whose blood brings new life to its once dead soil.